the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good afternoon and welcome to Yeshiva YouTube, Just Daf It. Today we're doing Daf Gittin, Daf Yudal, number 14. Great share for you today as usual. Let's start your Gilmam Bees. We're in the middle over here. About 6 lines from the bottom. Amalei Ravashi, La Memar. Yesterday we're trying to figure out the din of how this din of Maimed Shlashtan is, the reasoning behind it. Why does Maimed Shlashtan work? Basically, there's 3 people in a room. Reuven, Shimon, and Levi. Shimon is holding a possession of Reuven, so Reuven can say, I'm transferring ownership of the possession from me to Levi. And it works, even before Shimon actually gives it to Levi, that works. It's binding halachically. It's a kinyan midoraisa l'chor. So it works. The question is, why does it work? So yesterday we suggested at the shir that when a person, at least when someone borrows money, when someone borrows money, so let's say Shimon borrowed money from Reuven, Reuven is transferring the debt to Levi. So when Shimon borrowed the money from Reuven, he basically agrees that I'm not only going to be indebted to you, but I'll be indebted to anyone who you're indebted to, who you want to give the money to. So if that's really true, let's say he gives many years past after the loan, and then they do my mishlashtan with a person who was born after the original loan happened. It should follow according to your reasoning. It shouldn't work because it's only predicated on the fact that when someone borrows money, they're being mishabed themselves. They're indebting themselves not just to the person who lent them the money, anyone who owes money, who the person is indebted to, the person they borrowed money to is indebted to, and here or will be indebted to, and here he wasn't alive at that point. The afiler and mayor, the Amar Adam, Machlokes between the Chachamim and mayor. Could a person transfer ownership of something that's not in the world yet? Right, an apple tree that didn't grow yet. That's only if you're transferring the ownership to someone who's right now alive. To transfer something to someone who's not even born yet, no one says, even a mayor would say you can't do that, so it doesn't work over here. Rashi is a different reason it works. Top of Yudal and Aleph. But the Kamishtanile bin Milva Yishana Milva Chadasha Gomer Mishtabed Nafshe. Right? Let's say Reuven lent money to Shimon. So Shimon owes the money to Reuven. So now Reuven says, instead of paying me, you'll pay Levi the money. Now, the reason he's more happy about this is because presumably it took him a long time to pay off his loan, or some amount of time, and usually debt goes for collection after a certain amount of time, 30 days, time of us 30 days, or it could be a year, 10 years. So when you transfer it to a new person you're indebted to, you get a longer time to pay it off. So with that hana that he gets by transferring the loan, he was mishabed himself through his feelings, and that works. Amrlai Huna Mar brother of Nehemiah Rav Ashi, Humar the son of Nehemiah to Rav Ashi, Elamata, Kigon Hani Bebar Yashav, the Kafti Vashakli Alzer. There's people in the house of Al Yashav. It was a powerful family that when they're owed money by anyone, they go and they press them to pay them right away. If they were part of the Maimed Shlashtan, it wouldn't work in that case. They wouldn't be happy to transfer the loan to that person because they'll collect it. They'll be a debt collector that's more forceful than the person that he's now indebted to. And maybe you'll tell me it's true. In that case, it wouldn't work. Then it's going to be, we have to evaluate every case. And we can't do that in halacha. It has to be one standard rule. You can't evaluate, would he rather be owing the money to a different person than this person. Ella Amar Marzutra finally says, Hani twas mili shavinu rabban gelchsa below time. There were 3 halachas that the Rabbanan made like halach l'Moshe Sinai. We don't know the reason for halach l'Moshe Sinai. There is a reason. We don't know the reason for halach l'Moshe Sinai. This is one of the things that we're stating in the Gemara, that there's no explanation. We can't find an explanation. We can't fathom an explanation to it until Mashiach comes. Chadaha, one here. V'idach, what are the other 2? The Amar Rav Yehuda, Amar Shmuel, Akosev kol nechasav le'ishto. He writes I'm giving all my property to my wife. Does it work or not? Lo asa ela apitropia. The halacha is that it doesn't work. Even her ashtar, and he gave it to the wife. She only becomes someone who's in charge of the possessions. She manages. She's a manager, but she doesn't own it. If he marries his oldest son in a house, he marries him in a new house. The wedding hall was a house, and he owns that house. So besides acquiring his wife, he also acquires the house, the son. This works here in the United States, Israel, because when you marry off a child, you have to give a house usually. We're going to talk about some cases now, instances of this Maimid Shlashtan. So Rav said to Rav Achbar, I have basically an amount, a kilo, let's say, of saffron. Saffron is the most expensive spice in the world. A kilo of saffron could cost you $10,000. I have some by you. He says in front of a third person, the recipient, I want you to give it to a third person. And I want you to give it in front of me so that I can't retract this dealing. So the Gemara says, Michlal di boy hadar be. The fact that Rav stated it like this seems to say, right, that technically he could go back. He's just stating, I'm not going to retract my deal. Sounds like you could go back. Sounds like it's not a good kinyan. The Gemara says, He wasn't saying that by giving it over in front of me, I'm not going to take it back. He's saying by doing this, that's basically what he's saying. It's a kinyan and I can't go back. Rav said this a different time. Right? Rav is the originator of the statement. It works. If it was just that teaching, that's only when it's talking about. Sorry, it was only from the case, the instance for the saffron, which was a big present, $10,000 worth of present. That's considered to be a large amount of money. However, my mishlashim can potentially work, even without the third person present, by a small present, that would work. Kamash Mulan, no, you need the third person over there. That's the statement of Rav. There was a story of three gardeners. They worked for, a person who owns a house. He hires gardeners to work his garden. Now these gardeners were dealing with, making the person's garden very nice. They were buying stuff, they were selling stuff, buying flowers, and they were engaged in their business dealings to help this person, the balabayas out, to have a nice garden. One of them ended up, when the calculation the other day, he ended up with 5 extra coins. He didn't know why he had 5 extra coins. The other gardeners, there were, let's say, 4 gardeners, they said, give the money to the balabais. Balabais was standing there. Give that extra 5 coins to him. And not only that, they also did a kinyan chalipin to assume that it was a really good kinyan. Then a kinyan chalipin, which is basically the owner would pick up something belonging to this person or some of the gardeners. Then he recalculated this person. It was a mistake. He didn't have any extra money. He didn't get any extra money. He came to Rav Nachman. He came to Rav Nachman. Nachman said, nothing I can do for you. He said, my mishlashon is kohen. He also did a kinyan chalipin. Rava said back to Rav Nachman, was he saying over here that I owe him money, but I don't want to give it to him? That's what his taina was? No. He's saying that it was a mistake. He never owed him the money. I'm saying, in kinyan betos. If that's the case, really, it was a kinyan. The chalipin, at least, was a kinyan betos. We call kinyan betos choser. Any chalipin which is a mistake, is choser. Now, what about the Maimid Shlashton? So you could say Maimid Shlashton Betos is also choser. The problem is Maimid Shlashton, we said before, doesn't have a reason. So you can't apply reasoning to it. The reason Kinyan Betos doesn't work is because there was a mistake. There was no intention to make a deal. But you can't apply Svara to Maimid Shlashton. So what about Maimid Shlashton? If you want to answer that question, stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where I talk about something. I just had a long interview with somebody who's a very honest person who lives here in the neighborhood, and we had a discussion about something very similar to this, about someone makes a mistake, and you have some extra money by you. You have to go make an effort to return it to the person. I'll weigh in on that based on this Gemara. It's Mar. Now we're going to back to something relevant to the Mishnah we just had in your Gimel. Holech mana leploni shani chayev lo. If you say to a person, a shliach, an emissary, an agent, give money to this person, shani chayev lo, I owe him money. I'm making you an agent, go give this money to him. I owe him $1,000, give it to him. Amarav chayev bechri. So Rav says this agent, right, he's responsible the whole journey to make sure that he's not negligent. If he's negligent, he's a shomer. He's at least a shomer chidim over here. So he's obligated to pay if he is negligent and he loses the money. If the person who sent the money wants to retract and take the money, I'll pay him a different time. He can't do that. Shmuel says because he's obligated, the agent, if he wants to retract, he could retract. Lema b'hakam, if you say that's what Rav and Shmuel are arguing. The Mar Sarva Holech Gezachi Dami. Well, Mar Sarva Holech Lav Gezachi Dami. Right? Can you retract? Now Rav says you can't retract because when I say bring the money, it's like I'm saying bizocha in it for him. Zachin adam shlav b'fanav. It's a schus to get your money paid back. You want it to be paid back. So therefore, when I say bring it, it's like I'm saying bizocha for him. Once the agent takes the money, he's zocha, he's mezakeh for the debtor. For the creditor, I'm sorry. Shmuel says no, it's not kazaki, therefore you can retract. Lo, the chuli alma, the Gemara rejects the chuli alma holich kazaki dam. Really, everyone agrees holich is kazaki dam. Here we're talking about something else. Here's the case because the agent is responsible to pay. So Shmuel says because he's responsible to pay, so therefore he doesn't have intent, right, to be responsible and give it to the other person. He wants a possibility of the person retracting, because if he is able to retract, that means if he retracts, I'm not responsible anymore to make sure it's handed over to the person, to the recipient, to the person, the creditor. So he wants that. So therefore, that's why he can be choser. And Rav says we don't say migo, and therefore the regular halacha, he was zochen, and I can't be choser, I can't retract. Tanya Kavasi the Rav. We have a brisa which supports Rav. Holech mana leploni shani chayev lo. It says to an agent, bring $100 to this man that I owe him. Tain mana leploni, or he says a different language. Give $100 to this man shani chayev lo. I owe him that money. Holech mana leploni, or he says bring a gift to a man. Pikadon sheish li biyadi. Sorry, it wasn't a gift. It was a deposit that he was holding on to. Sheish li biyadi. Tain mana leploni pikadon sheish li biyadi, or he says give. The language give, not holech. Tain give. Bring this money to this person that deposited by me. Chayev b'achrius, so the agent is chayev to make sure nothing happens. So and if the person wants to retract, he can't retract, like Rav says. So the Gemara asks on this brisa, bikadon, by the first case of an obligation, a debt, we understand. Bikadon lemole, when it comes to a deposit, ein ritzono sheyehi pigdona b'yadacha, right? This person has the deposit. He's saying give it to a third person. The person who deposited it by this person doesn't want his pikadon to go to the other person, right? Amar Rav Zera k'shehuksa kafra. No, this case is specifically talking about a case where this person who has the deposit has denied having being a deposit for many times. In that case, the first person who deposited wants it to get out of his hands as easily as possible, so he'd want it to be given to the other person. Rav Sheshes had a bunch of coats. He was in the coat business in Mechuzah. Rav Yosef Bar Chama, Rav Yosef Bar Chama was going to Mechuzah. When you come back, bring me the debt. Someone owed him money in the coat business. Azal Yavinu Lei. So the person on his way back from Mechuzah gave him the money. Amri Lei Niktim Minach. They said to him, let's make a kinyan that we're not obligated, that you're obligated as the agent to bring it back. You're obligated, you're responsible for it. We don't want to be responsible for the travel. Amar Lahu in. He said yes. L'sof ishtam bit lahu. At the end, he didn't go through with it. He didn't make the kinyan. Kiasa l'gabei, when he came back to Rav Sheshes, Amar le shapir avat lo shavit nafshech avid lo velish malva. It's a good thing that you didn't make this kinyan. You didn't obligate yourself to watch over it, because otherwise you would become indebted. It's not good to be indebted. A lova, someone who borrows money to someone else, is a slave. This is literally true. People borrow money from other people. When you owe people money, you're a slave to those people. You have to do whatever they say, even if it's not regarding paying back the money. Lishnachri, a different way of saying this. Shapir avat eved lo velish malva. It was a good thing that you didn't make the kinyan, because who's responsible? The lova, the debtor, he's responsible more than the malva. He's responsible to make sure that it comes back to my hands. So there's no reason for you to take responsibility. Rav Achi Rabbi Yoshi Havale is Ispaka the Kasb ben Harda. He had a silver cup in the Harda. Amar, he wanted to give back. Amar Lahu Rabbi Dostai Rabbi Yanai Rabbi Yossi Bar Kefa on the top of Yudal and Beis. When you're coming back from there, bring it to me. They gave it to him. When they said, let's make a kin, like the case before, that we're no longer obligated for if anything happens to it, shipping and handling. Amri lahu lo. They said, no, we're not going to take that kinyan. Amri lahu adrin halan. They said, give the silver cup back to us. We're not going to send it with you. Rabbi Dostai, Rabbi Yanai, Amar lahu in. He said, okay, I'll give it back. The Rabbi ben Kefar, Amar lahu lo. He said, I'm not giving it back to you. Havu kometzarile. They were causing pain. They were torturing Rabbi Yossi Bar Kefar. Amar le chazimar hechi kavid. They said to Rabbi Dostai, who was with him, look what your friend is doing. Amar lahu tav ramule. He said, you're doing good. Beat him up more. Kiyasu legabe. When they came back, they were eventually released. I guess they didn't bring the silver cup back. When they came back to, who was it? Rav Achi Rabbi Yoshia, without the silver cup. Amar le chazi mar lo mistayid lo sayan. So Yosef Rakeh said about Rabbi Dostai, it wasn't good enough. They didn't help me. El Amar lahu nami tav ramule. He said, beat me up more. Amar le amai tavid haki. So he asked them, Rabbi Yosha asked him, why did you do such a thing? Why didn't you help your friend out? Amar le osem b'nei adam. These people, they're an amma tall. No, an amma is about 3 feet tall. They're, I guess, a foot taller, a foot and a half taller. A foot and a half. An amma is a foot and a half. They're about a foot and a half taller than most people. But kova an amma, they wear top hats. It's a foot and a half taller than most people. They speak from their bellies, which we'll say in Mavuholim. They have very strange names. Arda, powerful names. Arda, Pili Baresh. Pili Barish. These are their names. They're very strong people, part of the mafia. Omrim Kfusu Kovsin. If they direct people to tie people up, they do it. Amrin Horogin, Horgo. If they say kill him, they'll kill him. Ilo Harga Dustai. If they would have killed Dustai, he's saying about himself, if he would have gone along and supported his friend, they probably would have killed him. Minasan Liyanai, Abba Bar Kamot. Who would give my father a son like me? I would be dead. Amr Le Bnei Adam. So he asked them, Bnei Adam Halal Krov and Lamalchasing. Are they in collusion with the government? Amr Lehin. Yes. Yesh Lahen Susim Aproim Sharatan Acharayah. Do they have fancy cars? They have horsepower, fancy horses and donkeys that run in front of them. Amr Lehin. Amr Lehi Hachia Shapra Avad. If it was true, Sakanat Nefashos, you would have died. You did good by basically cheering them on, validating what they did, and that's why neither of them died. Holech Manal Ploni Vahalach Ubikshuv Lo Matzu. Let's say you say give $100 to Ploni, and he went to look for him and he didn't find him. He's giving a matana to him. One opinion says, one brayza says, the halacha is you give it back to the person who sent it. Apparently he had died. And other people say you give it to the inheritors. The inheritors of, I guess even if he didn't die, you give it to his inheritors because it was a gift to him. What are they arguing about? The Marsar Holich Kazaki. Marsar Holich Lav Kazaki. Isn't this the Maseh Machlokes? Right? The opinion that says holy, when you say holich, is zocha. So the person got it. So if he's not around, you can't find him, you give it to his yarshim. The person is holich lav Kazaki dami, so therefore it goes back to the sender. You can't find him. Amar Abba Ramamal. The Chuliyam, everyone holds holich lav Kazaki dami. When you say take something to a man, he's not zocha immediately. Lo kasha. When it's talking about a healthy person giving it, so he wants his money back. Shchimera, right? It's his dvarim keksuvim u'msurim dami. Once he says something, we don't want him to die, so therefore it's like he already gave it over. Rabbanan said the kinyan already happened, so therefore you give it to his yarshim. Rav Zvira Amar hava ha b'shchimera. Both prices are talking about shchimera. Had the isel l'mkabel b'shas matan mos. Had the isel l'mkabel b'shas matan mos. Depends where was he alive, right? If he died, right, the person who was supposed to get the present, if before he made the statement, the shchimera made the statement, so it goes back to him. If he was alive when he made the statement, and even if he died a second later, then it would go to the Yorshim. Rav Papa Amar gives a third solution. Haba Bari. Both are talking about a person who's healthy. Had the miss mekabel mechayinos, and had the miss nosen mechayim mekabel. Depends who died first. Now, in this case, I'm saying Bryces are talking about a case where both people died. The person who sent the money and the person who sent who the money was sent to. So if the person who the money was sent to dies first, right, and then the person who sent the money dies, so then it goes back to him. However, if he were to die first, and then the person who's supposed to get the money dies, so therefore we're going to learn about a concept, mitzvah l'kayim divrei hames. It's sort of like a kinyan that you have to, or not a kinyan, but the yorshim, your inheritors, have to fulfill whatever your father wanted to do with that money, and you have to give it to, even though he's not alive, but he was alive, you have to give it to his yorshim. Leima holek azachi tonight. Say the Gemara persists. Say the machlok holek azachi is mali sanayim. The sanya of a long price here. Holek mana leploni v'halach. Ubiksho v'lo matzo. Bring him money. I'm giving a present to someone. You search for him. You didn't find him. Yachzur l'mishaleach. Tana comments that it goes back to the sender. Meis mishaleach. Let's say the sender died already. The Nasr Yaakov on Yachzur l'yarshim mishaleach. Nasr Yaakov say it goes back to his yarshim, the sender's inheritors. Some people say some say it goes to the inheritors, the people who are sent to. Yehuda Nasi Omer, Mishur Yaakov, Shor Mishur Meir, Mitzvah L'Kayim Divrei Hames. He says over here, right, the person who died first was the sender. So therefore you have to listen to him, and therefore you have to give it to the inheritors, even though the recipient, or the recipient who was supposed to get it, the supposed to be recipient was supposed to get it, and now he's died, so he's supposed to listen to Divrei Hames. The sender died first, therefore you go to his yarshim. A fourth opinion says you split the money. Half goes back to the yarshim of the mishaleach, half goes back to the yarshim of the person who was sent to. And here they said in Bavel, kol mashir to shliach yasad. A fifth opinion, whatever the shliach wants to do, he can do. He can either give it back to the family of the mishaleach or the person that was sent to. Amr Shimon Nasi al Yadaha Ma'aser. Shimon Nasi concludes the brisa with this incident happened with me. The Amru and the Rabbanan said Yachzor liYarshim Mishaleh. They said give it back to the sender's family. My love v'hakam ifli. Let's try to figure out what all these Tanaim are arguing. Tanakama savar holich lav kazachi. Tanakama says he doesn't talk about a case where he died. Tanakama is the only one who doesn't talk about the case where he died. Holich lav kazachi. Therefore, when you send someone, you send the gift and you can't find them, it goes back to the sender because he wasn't zocha in it yet. You don't give it to his family of the person that was sent to. They also agree that's true. Yet they add in also, right? Even though this person died, right before the recipient or the supposed recipient died, there's no mitzvah to do divrei hames, and therefore you don't have to give it to his family, the other person's family. Holig is like Zaki, therefore you give it to the family of the recipient. Rabbi Yehuda Nasi Omar, Mishum Rabbi Yaakov, Mishum Rabbi Meir, Holig Lav Kazaki. Holig is not Kazaki, Miyu, Ha Hicha, the Miss Amrina, Mitzvah L'Kayim the Ramis. For a different reason, you give it to the family of the recipient, because you're supposed to listen to your father who died. V'cham Omrim Yachloku. Chum say you split it, Misafka Lahu. They were unsure what the halacha is. Is Holig Kazaki or not Kazaki? And even if Holig is not Kazaki, they were unsure if Mitzvah L'Kayim the Ramis or not. But Kanamru, and here in Bavel, they said, fifth opinion, Shuda Adif. It's better that the person, the Shliach, the emissary, decides. Shuda the Daini, we learned about it many times in Matzach Suvos. The Dayanim, or in this case, the Shliach, he's the Dayan, he's the judge. He can decide what he wants to do. It's up to him. Some say he can just pick randomly which one. The Machlokes Rashi and Tos. The other opinion in the Rishonim is that he has to estimate would he really want to give a gift in such a circumstance. Reb Shimon Nasi Ma'isa Asa Lashmoinan. And Reb Shimon Nasi is just adding an incident which happened. So that's where we're going to end off today. The Gemara is trying to say that among these 5 opinions is a machlokes, holik gezaki, holik lav gezaki. The Gemara is going to reject that, but it's a long discussion, so therefore we're going to stop over here. Stay tuned for Ian with Ben Sion, where I talk about Maimid Shlashtan. The Gemara says today the final reasoning, it doesn't make sense, or at least we can't fathom the reason. So how does that fit in with the story the Gemara has with the gardeners who apparently found extra money and they did a kinyan Maimid Shlashtan, and it turned out that it was a mistake, but it's something there was no problem with Maimid Shlashtan. Why wasn't there a problem with Maimid Shlashtan? It just doesn't make any sense. If the kinyan Chalipin is choser, but kinyan B'tos is choser, it makes sense logically. A kinyan only makes sense if it wasn't a mistake. Otherwise, you wouldn't have made the kinyan with the given something to someone. Maimid Shlashtan doesn't make any sense. You can't say Maimid Shlashtan B'tos loving Maimid Shlashtan because it doesn't make any sense. There's no reasoning to it. So why was Maimid Shlashtan not effective? We'll talk about that, Ian, with Ben Sion coming up next.